Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Future Tech Podcast. It's me, Charlie Sell, the Group MD of Arrows Group, where I get a chance to interview, speak, have open conversations with technical leaders, chief people officers around the world, finding a bit about their story, getting a bit of understanding of what's passionate to them in regards to their own business and the industry they work in. And we always finish on that all-important career advice for many of our STEM listeners. So I'm really happy to have Maurizio Tripi with me today. Maurizio is the CTO of Bidroom. Bidroom's a global travel technology company that's gone through various developments from being the online travel business to now a true technical business and how their model has evolved. So Mauricio, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's jump straight in and find out a bit about your story. How did you get into technology?
Oh, I got in computer science and technology when I was about 12. And that's a funny story because I was the younger of three brothers. And of course, I was always getting orders from everybody in the family. So when I discovered there was something in the universe that I could actually control and respond to my commands, I discovered that yes, programming something was my life. But joking aside, yes, I started very young. At that time, there were home computers like Texas Instruments and the Commodore and this kind of home computers. So I started learning by myself assembly language for the Commodore 64. And so in a couple of years, I managed starting to develop video games and that I managed also to sell. I started learning many things by myself until I get into the university in computer science, engineering, and of course I started learning more and more as a broader perspective. And while I was studying, I was also working as a freelance developer, and I was very much into that. I was working on this all the time. I was having a lot of fun and having also a lot of experiences. And I've been working as a freelance developer, trying to discover all kind of technologies. And in those years, I'm talking about the 90s. And the first job in a large enterprise as actually an employee, not a freelance developer, I had at 27 when I joined a multinational company, a German large enterprise, and I developed a framework for distributed systems. At that time there was Corba, a very important framework for distributed objects. So we developed, in that experience, I developed a framework for rebuilding their ERP. After that, I stayed in that company, not long, maybe 1 year just to do this experience. And then I get into the experience of startups. So I was invited by ex-colleagues at the university to join a startup. And we created a new startup when we created a business intelligence product in Java in those years. And that was a success. We sold the product to a UK company. And then I moved on. So I was changing very quickly my experiences. And then I joined a group of companies that was mostly system integrator, as it was very common at that period. And we were building systems for telecommunications, for transportations, for large companies. And inside this company, I actually started developing a new perspective on how to grow knowledge, because I got the task of building a team of about 50, 60 people, and to build a system for the telecommunication company in Italy. And so I started hiring people, engineers, and training them on about new technologies that that time were pretty not well known, like Corba, like a lot of object orientation things and methodologies. I remember that we're using a kind of OMT and Booch approach at that time, and some of the unified process. And so I was training this team and had the task of had the challenge of training many new engineers into new technologies. And so I created the first, I didn't know, but it was the first community of practice in Italy, and to actually grow the knowledge of this team very quickly. And it was very successful, so that the company, I was asked by the president of this group to lead a company. So I was appointed CEO of a new unit, and I grew this team from 20 people to 100 in just 2 years. And it was very successful because we were doing a lot of products in many different industries, in defense and healthcare, in telecommunication, and so on. So that was a very interesting experience. And after like 2-3 years, I moved on, and I decided to create a new company by myself, and it was focused on Agile methodologies. And because I started working with these Agile methodologies a few years before, I was kind of focused at that time. It was 2003, and they were pretty new concept. So I created this consulting company focused on software engineering with Agile methodologies. And few years into this experience, the company was not growing as fast as the previous one. So I was not that happy. I was very ambitious. So I moved to the United States in 2005. And after a few months, I received an acquisition offer from the Herzog Group, a consulting company based in Chicago, Illinois. And that was a very interesting offer also, because we were very, let's say, aligned in terms of approaches, in terms of methodologies, in terms of architectures. And so from a technical point of view, we were very much aligned. And so I joined the company as initially as chief scientist. And that was very, very good for my ego. At that time, I was still young, because I knew just a couple of chief scientists in this area. One was, I think, Grady Butch, and the other one was, don't remember, but I mean, it was something that was, I thought something interesting is to start like that. And from the United States, I actually was asked to manage the European project, because I was originally from Italy. And so I moved back to Italy, but I actually was traveling around Europe and North Africa for managing projects. And so we were doing large transformation programs, so multi-year, multi-business line projects to transform companies, how companies do IT or technology in general. And we were helping these companies from the IT strategy down to architecture, enterprise architecture first, then architecture, methodologies, and software factories. And this, so the Agile group has an original approach developed by Peter Ersum for system using business components, so distributed systems. And they were also developing a platform for managing the development and the runtime of these systems, something like what today is Kubernetes. So runtime system for running distributed systems based on what today we call microservices. Before we were calling them business components, or in general distributed systems. And so I've been working in this company for until 2011, and then I decided, okay, I've been working in this enterprise system for so long, I want to get back to something that is more focused to customers. So I started. I decided to quit the company and focus on something more social. So I developed a mobile application for improving social relationships. It was Real Contacts. And so I developed this system, and I moved to San Francisco. I spent a few years in San Francisco and joining the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And so it was a great experience, and to actually go to the very, let's say, roots of this technology based entrepreneurship. And that was very different from what I experienced before in Europe or in large enterprises. It is more going to the core values, what is really important to create something that is successful. And so a great experience. I learned a lot, and from technical perspective, from entrepreneurial perspective, and so after a while I started also advising other companies, and as advisor for entrepreneurs, for technology aspect, for product aspects, and so on. And after a few years, I spent 7-8 years in San Francisco in this context, doing various things, collaborating also with other companies and startups, but working mostly in startups. Yes. And at some point, I wanted to join in more active role a startup. So I was actually looking for companies at good stage of development and more in a scale up, well funded, with a great product, a great team. And so when I discovered Bidroom, they were looking actually for some technologists that could join the board of directors and lead the transformation of the company from an online travel agency into a travel tech company. So in 2019, I joined Bidroom, and I moved from San Francisco to Krakow, Poland. Probably I'm the only one in the world. Because the Bidroom is actually a Dutch company, but most of their operations are in Poland, in Krakow. So I relocated to Krakow, and I transformed the company. I transformed this company into a product company, first of all, and I changed all the technology, all the products, and we actually created in these 3 years, almost 3 years, a new platform, a very innovative platform for the travel tech industry. And and so we are actually growing a lot in this area. We are getting a lot of attention, and there are large companies. We have partners like Visa, Lufthansa, and many big players that are actually very interested in what we have done in these 2 years.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so here I am.
Wow. Well, what a story. And what I love about that is your confidence and your ambition to go from being an entrepreneur, starting your own business, then working with multinationals, then starting your own and helping. You're living proof that variety is you don't have to pigeonhole yourself with one type of business, do you? You don't have to just work for, if you work for a large multinational, that's the only type of business that you can work for. Or if you start your own business, you can't transform. Your career is brilliant. It really has. You've just followed your passion, haven't you?
That's true. And that's actually, so my career was not linear at all. Mm. I really followed my passion. I wanted to learn, and most of the times I choose directions that where I felt that I could actually move the needle. Yeah. So I want to have an impact. I want to, and I'm not just someone that wants to do things my way. I'm a very good collaborator, but I need to be able to give my contribution and to actually move the needle to create the success of the company. So I've never been really enthusiastic in joining a very large company when you are, maybe you can learn a lot, you can do a very nice career, you can earn money and save job, but I needed something moving faster. And I actually can see what I can, what is my contribution for the company.
And that's so clear. And that brings us nicely on to, we were talking earlier about collaboration within software engineering teams, and it's obviously clearly something that you love to do. So tell me a little bit, just a bit about how you've got around making, implementing collaboration and building that out within your software engineering teams.
Yeah, this actually started when I joined my first, I was mentioning this multinational German company, where I was moving from being super skilled software engineers, knowing everything about technologies and design and architecture, and to the task of, okay, now these skills, I can't build an ERP alone. I need a large team to build this. And so how can we make the team efficient, collaborating, aligned, and working together in an efficient way, in an effective way? So I started realizing that it was not enough being super skilled in technology. You need to be able to align people in building some strange thing that is software, that is this new kind of artifacts that engineers want to build, that has to be very flexible. And this is something new, because you design a bridge and it stays there for years or decades. You build software, next week has to change. And this is, so there were new challenges. So at the end of the 90s, I actually got very much interested into what were we calling at that time lightweight methodologies. Now we call them agile methodologies. And so my first approach was actually the first, the Uppsala paper from Ken Schwaber and about Scrum. And it was kind of 1998, I think. And so I said, oh, this is the way, this is the approach. And I was also a lot into the manufacturing production systems from Japan, from the Toyota production system, all these let's say, approaches to continuous improvement, building knowledge. So these aspects that were crucial, and they are actually intertwined very strictly with Agile methodologies. So this is the kind of context. So I became a kind of expert in Agile methodologies, probably one of the first in Europe. And so I used this approach of very strict collaboration, very strict feedback, and knowledge sharing to build, for example, the community of practice I was mentioning before, that led my company to grow very quickly. And learning in that context was so fast. And sometimes people were so happy about, my employees were so happy about learning so fast, but also they say, oh, wow, it is so fast. Sometimes I can manage this level of learning, because I was helping them to be actually really in a context of fast growing, and sometimes also difficult to manage that. So I immediately started focusing in these aspects, and for a while I was a lot into methodologies, and I was doing this job at that time was pretty much what we were doing, because we were moving from large methodologies, heavyweight methodologies, and we were integrating Agile aspect into these methodologies. And so there were some kind of hybrids. And since the methodologies that were defined before were so large and complex, there were what was needed was some kind of tailoring of the methodology itself to actually match the project or the organization or the, all the aspects of the organization, because they were very defined. Now we are used with Agile methodologies that are very simple, that are based on principles mostly, and they have very simple practices that can be applied in many different contexts with very little changes. But at that time, it was not like that. So we were using these principles to tailor heavyweight methodologies until Scrum was actually, and all the XP and all the other methodologies.
So you would say you were one of the first movers, one of the first movers into Agile and Scrum, and seeing it before it was actually the widespread methodology it is today. That's, well done you, because I think you're ahead of the game on that one. And I remember in 2003 I was certified by Ken Schwaber, and so it was the second cohort, the second class in the world for Scrum Master.
Wow! And it was in 2003, and we were a group of people that we were actually already using Scrum for several years. So Ken Schwaber wanted to do this.
That's fantastic, and this has just been so interesting, because they see and time has flown by. We're coming up to the final part, because it's just been so interesting hearing about, as you're saying, with the collaboration. What you saw early was it's not in silos. To genuinely get software engineering teams working together, you've got to be able to find that collaborative approach, and seeing how, Agile and Scrum and the progress of the methodology throughout the years, it's now here to stay, isn't it? So final words then for the podcast is the all important career advice. So have you got, and we've got about a minute or two for the podcast left. So what's your gem for many of our listeners listening and wanting to get into the next company? What do you look for? And what can they do to really stand out?
I would say focus and a lot more on what you don't know, what are the unknowns. So, and this can be obvious because you want to learn, so maybe you focus on things that you don't know. But the point is that if you need to keep this kind of question, what I don't know now, what I don't see immediately now, in every day, every task you get. And what I tell my team all the time is that I'm not looking for solutions or answers when we design things. I'm looking for questions. So the kind of questions that I couldn't think of. And that's actually what makes a really senior person, the one that does the questions that the other people didn't think about, because we are engineers. And so every engineer has a solution for everything. Okay, right? But the point is finding more questions so that your solution is more resilient to time. It can actually think of an unknown, can be resilient to unknown problems that are not immediately visible now, today.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great piece. You know, for many of our listeners, you know, what I took from that, being able to ask the questions rather than just the solutions, and to have that inquisitive mindset, and to be the person at the table who's thinking out the box is what will stand you apart. And yeah, just thank you, Rob, to hear those words from someone who's done it and been there and now has built teams of over 100, 200 plus engineers. I can imagine it's clear you're still as passionate today as you were when you probably started your career, thinking about how to develop people in that way and to open up their mindsets. So Maurizio, thank you so much. The time has flown by. I was just so engrossed with your story, as I said, and in your thoughts on collaboration. And for many of our listeners, that's another episode of our Future Tech podcast. The podcast is on our website, arrowsgroup.com/podcasts, and it's on the career portals of the 37 universities we're partnered with and our Spotify channel. So when the podcast is live, we'll find it on our LinkedIn page. And final words, a massive thank you to Maurizio and your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And to our listeners, here's another episode of Future Tech.
Thanks. Bye.